Welcome to Clarity in Action. This is the show where we have real conversations that are going to challenge your perspectives and drive real action. So if you are tired of holding back and you're ready to make bold moves, this is the show for you. Join us as we are going to take you from confusion into clarity. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Clarity in Action. I am your host, Clara Capano, and I am really excited for today. This is going to be a topic that I think most of us are going to be able to resonate with and also take away a lot of ideas. Now, one of the things that I love to do is I love to read. One of my favorite things about books are the fact that they have chapters, different chapters, because a new chapter is not just about a new beginning. It's about new ideas, new concepts, and it's what takes us on the journey of the book. And that's what we're talking about today, are the chapters in your life, the chapters in your business, and how to learn how to not just move through them with grace and confidence, but also how to embrace them and how to let them be a guide and a compass. And to do this, I have one of my dear friends, Tinsley. Welcome to the show. So Tinsley, this is something that you talk about. You've written books about it. Why is it so important for us to understand the importance of chapters in the lives, not only of ourselves, but also of our businesses?
Clara, I'm so excited to be here, and thank you for having me on the show. So, chapters are something that I think a lot of people don't realize that they're in different chapters, especially when we're young. We think that maybe the way it is when we are in high school or the way things are in college, the way we feel about certain stages or ages, it's going to be the same throughout our entire year. And we don't realize how we evolve over time. And so when I think about my life and reflect as almost being a 50-year-old woman, can't believe I'm saying that out loud. And I thought once I got to 50, I'd, have a major panic attack. And now I'm like, no, let's go. I can't wait.
Mhm.
I look back at each of those different chapters with fondness, with nostalgia. Some of the times that I, had to be more resilient than others, I look at them like, wow, I cannot believe I made it through that. And you
Mhm.
don't realize when you're in the messy middle of it or the thick of it that you are going to get through it and you're going to learn so much. So many people think that um the easy times are the best times. You don't remember those easy times. So I laugh when I think about my husband and I first married. I ended up losing a job, and we made a quick decision to move to Florida. His family's there, my sister was there, and I was the family budget financier, keeping all the books for the family at the time. And I called him one day. I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep the books. We had a house for sale in Georgia. We were renting a house in Florida, as you can imagine. So $3,500 was going out the door every day in
Mhm.
payments for houses that one was no longer ours, one was on loan to us. And I said, we have $6 in our checking account.
Yeah.
And that was including savings. I mean,
Mhm.
$6. We couldn't even go get like a 49-cent hamburger at the time.
Yeah.
But we look back on those times and just we giggle and we reflect and we think about the grit that we had
Mhm.
to get through those times. So I'm all for talking about chapters today and every single one of them and what we learn in each stage.
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you say about the idea that you don't always remember the easy times. It's those challenging times that build the character. And I think there is a misnomer and kind of a myth out there that the next chapter, one, needs to be scary, it's going to be hard, and three, that it has to be bigger, badder, and bolder than the current one they're in. So, kind of talk to me a little bit about these myths and how the next chapter doesn't have to be something that we fear, but one that we more embrace. I always think about in nature, when we look at animals like a butterfly, The only way it becomes it is by going into the next chapter. We have dragonflies, they have to grow, they have to shed, like snakes, they have to shed their skin to grow. That's a new chapter. And I think that, people really get too caught up and they create these thoughts that are not necessarily truth. So kind of talk a little bit about what you see and why we should sort of debunk this fear behind chapters.
Well, I attribute a lot of my embracing each chapter to my mom, who I talk about a lot in my books, and I talk about a lot when I've been on podcasts and had my own podcast. But she was kind of my mentor and my muse growing up, because I saw her as someone, as a single mom, starting her own business, an interior design business, with not two nickels to rub together, two daughters depending on her, not really knowing how to run a business, but deciding that she wanted to be an interior designer. So she was one of the original designing women in the 80s, with the
Oh.
pads and the huge earrings and the bracelets and like the hair. And I saw her just take every challenge that came at her as a woman and as a business owner in a small little town in Georgia. And I saw her getting older. And as she moved through her 30s and then she came to her 40s. She was thriving and she was going through her own challenges. But when I'd ask her about those times, she was like, no, don't ever be scared of this next decade. My 40s were my best time. And then when she went through she said my 50s were my best time. So like, as I am staring down the barrel of 50, less than 200, maybe it's even less than that to go, I'm thinking this doesn't look so bad. This doesn't look so scary. The old adage is like, any day you wake up on above the ground is a good
Yeah.
day, and that
Mhm.
truly is. And if you look at each day as a blessing and each day as an opportunity, not only to grow yourself, but to make that unique impact that we're sent
Mhm.
here to make,
Yeah.
it's another opportunity to connect with your people. Like, Clara, you have your people that depend on this podcast
Mhm.
every day. I have my women that depend on my LinkedIn post or my Instagram post every day. So if you know that, like, every single moment, every single day is your opportunity to make your mark and leave your legacy,
Mhm.
each day doesn't seem so scary. Now, if you're thinking about the next 30 years, that can be a little bit daunting. But I love what you said, the analogy about animals. The snake does not fear
Mhm.
shedding its skin. And lobsters, I don't know if you know this, they're the ones that should be really afraid, because they outgrow their shells and they shed their shells. And while they're growing a new shell, they're very, very exposed, and they find little safe havens and rocks to hide under until their shell hardens. So I like to think about, like, when you're in those growth spaces, find your safe spaces where you can grow when your
Mhm.
shell is a little bit soft. So it
Yeah.
it would be your community, it would be your trusted friend group, or maybe your trusted peer group. They
Mhm.
can be that, like, rock of safety that you shelter under while you're still feeling it out. And
Yeah.
not going to look perfect in my 50s or your 50s or any of these stages. It's not going to look the same. When we have kiddos, you try to compare your kids' milestones, or your baby's milestones, to everybody else's milestones. And you'll call your girlfriend, well, Ella's not walking yet, or Ella's not doing this. And as you look back as a mom, you realize, like, I don't know why I stressed about that. She eventually walked, she eventually crawled, she eventually was potty trained. If you don't try to compare yourself to other people's journeys,
Yeah.
because comparison is the thief of joy, I think
Absolutely.
it makes the stages more fun. And I
Mhm.
love what you said about what did you say about going into this next phase, not just not being afraid.
But just again, learning how to embrace it and, use it as a way to excite you. And it doesn't always
It
have
is
to be bigger.
exciting.
It doesn't have to always be bigger.
That's what it
We
was.
Yeah, we were talking about this offline, and, I've got you by a few years. I'm gonna be 55 this year, and I love my 50s too, and I think I'm at a stage where my next chapter is not as much about the hustle as it was in my 20s and 30s. Now, it is more about peace. and
Mhm.
legacy. So I think a lot of people, they think they have to be doing more. The next chapter has to be about more. And I don't think that's true. What are your thoughts on that? Can you hear me, Tinsley?
I can hear you. It
Okay.
broke up just a tad.
Yeah. So no, what are your thoughts on, does the next chapter have to be bigger, bolder, and badder than this one?
I think it's up to you to decide. If you do want bigger, bolder, badder, what is it? Does the bigger, bolder, badder of your 50s look like the bigger, bolder, badder of your 20s and 30s? Like, I know my energy level is different than it was back then. And my tolerance
Mhm.
for people and things that do not light me up, and tolerance for people and things um that do not support me is much lower, and the people pleasing that I did in my 20s,
Mhm.
and even 30s and some of my 40s, that 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 people pleasing thing kind of fell to the
Yeah.
wayside. So I am here for experiences and people that light me up, that support
Mhm.
me, that I can support them. And yeah, I'm with you. I mean, my ideal state is speaking on stages, which you love as much as I do, talking to women, exciting women with confidence. And really, my ideal like dream situation is waking up every day on a body of water, whether that's a lake or at the ocean. My husband's leaning a little more towards lake, and doing some yoga on the
Yeah.
porch. Like, that's certainly
Mhm.
not a penthouse at Park Avenue or anything that maybe I thought would equate to success in my 20s.
Yeah.
But, some yoga in front of a lake, and then a stroll with my dog, and
Mm.
then maybe flying out that week to a keynote. That's kind of the dream state, and
Yeah.
especially now that I'm about 20 days away
Mhm.
from being an empty nester, I can kinda see how that
Oh,
is not a
mhm.
not a far off possibility.
Nope, it's awesome. So I want to switch over to leadership a little bit, because I think that this is actually twofold. So the first thing I want to talk about is, as a leader, how can you coach and create an environment for it to be safe for your people to go into their next chapter? Because our team's going to evolve too, and they're going to be at different places. They might have been with us for 10, 12, 15 years, and the person that was there when we hired them is going to be different than the person today. So, how can leaders help to create it safe to unlock their people and allow them to go into their next chapters?
So my biggest advice is be vulnerable. A vulnerable relatable leader will trump, an accredited, certified MBA,
Mhm.
leader any day. I'd rather have a leader that says, "Hey, I get what you're going through." A couple of years ago, I was having a challenge with whether it's delegation or prioritization. Put yourselves in their shoes. So it's vulnerability, and then it's empathy.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're being a pushover, you're taking on their workload, but it's saying, like, I see where you are, I see what you're struggling with, and here are some things that help me. Because there's nothing worse than going to your manager and sharing an issue or sharing a challenge that you're having, and them looking at you like you've got three heads. Like,
Yeah.
well, why is this such a problem for you? And I'll be honest, Clara, there was a time in my life when I was early on in my leadership journey, before I found my great executive coach, that I wasn't a relatable leader and I wasn't an empathetic leader. I did my job and I did it very well. And I had the respect of my clients and my producers that I supported. And I just didn't understand why everybody thought it was so hard
Mhm.
to do the job that I had done successfully. And I realized that when I delegated to them, I wasn't delegating effectively. I wasn't giving them all the pieces that they needed in the puzzle to produce the result that we needed for our clients. And I would play the work martyr and take work back and huff off, um and just not being very empathetic. And it took my coach doing a 360 on me and interviewing a lot of people, and it was a little bit of a gut punch that, Tinsley, your team knows that you love them, but you love them too hard. Like, you got a death grip on the work and the work product, and a lot of it was self-protection, not knowing that I was trying to protect my reputation. Um, and I'm a people person, but empathy by nature is not something that comes naturally to me, and I admit that because a lot of women it is. That's the first thing that they can draw from, but for those women that are like, that's a challenge for me. Don't be ashamed of that. Don't be embarrassed of that, because typically some of our traits that are what would be a perceived weakness, or soft spot for us, if we learn to dial that up in the moment, that's
Mhm.
going to be way more effective than the one thing that absolutely comes naturally to us. So I would say learning to be an empathetic leader, and then also learning to be vulnerable. Like, the more you can share,
Yeah,
some people are like, we don't need to overshare with your team. I've not found that to be true. I found the more relatable and the more
mhm.
vulnerable you can be, the better the outcomes are for everybody.
I agree. I agree. So now I want to take it to the other side. Chapters. It's not just individual companies, organizations have chapters.
Mhm.
As they grow, the company they were 10 years ago might be different than the company they are today. So, how does an effective leader work with their team, their clients, the public when the company is going into a new chapter? I would imagine that same vulnerability, that same empathy, and everything's applies. But how can maybe a leader lead through that type of change when the company is going into a new chapter?
I think that we're going through a really big chapter in my home industry of insurance right now, and I don't know if this is true in real estate, but we're going through something called the silver tsunami. So we have almost 500,000 insurance professionals retiring between, I think it's within the next 3 years, at least within the next, at most within the next 5 years. So we're having a huge turnover. And what they're saying, the old adage is, well, all this institutional gold is kind of walking out the door. And then you've got young whippersnappers coming in. And
Mhm,
then you've got the middle, the millennials, and, what I'm Gen X. Uh, and there's this perception that when the last of the boomers, the higher end of the Gen X walks out the door, that we're all just going to be scratching our heads. Like, that's not true. They
mhm,
have prepared us well, and we are preparing the next generation well. I think the other thing that a lot of people, not only in my industry, um, but in any industry, is we're all worried about is AI going to
mhm.
replace my job? And what I tell people in my industry is that, well, if you're hanging your hat on process driven activities, like, I do this task, I do the same thing every day and move paper from one side of my desk. Absolutely. If that's the only thing that you're doing
Mhm.
to add value, then yes, I would be a little bit concerned about my job. But if you know how to do those processing things, and you realize that's a very small piece of the picture, and you are well networked within your industry, and you do have those relationships, and you are spending that face time with your clients and with your colleagues, and you've also got like your thing. Like, I'm sure, Claire, you've got your thing within your industry. I've certainly got, my thing as far as loving insurance and trying to
Mhm.
make, I always say, trying to make insurance sexy since 1999. Really trying to get people to bring their individual
Mhm.
selves to work. I think that if you are doing that and you're not just focusing so much on process task driven work, you're not going to have to worry about
Yeah.
your job. If you've made a name for yourself in your organization, your industry, as the go-to for
Mhm.
that one thing that
Yeah.
is not just process driven, you don't need to worry about it. So I would say that if we're going through a huge change, like a shift in workforce,
Mhm.
the workforce ages, or a huge shift in AI, um, it does go back to that vulnerability, and it does go back to the leader saying, we don't know what this is going to look like, and that's okay. We have an idea, but we're
Mhm.
gonna also be adaptable and pivot as we go, and we're gonna stay very close to the people on the ground floor that are doing a lot of the, day-to-day in and out.
Mhm.
So keeping our ears open and asking really
Yes.
good questions
Mhm.
and asking for feedback and taking the feedback.
Yeah.
I think that that if you do that, you don't get so far off track when
Mhm.
big changes are headed towards you.
Love that. Oh my God. So many great nuggets in this. And again, it just goes to show we've got to show up, we've got to communicate, we've got to be relational and, have the courage to have real conversations. So, one thing I would love to know is, you mentioned that you've written some books. I know that you are a keynote speaker as well. What is next for Tinsley? What are you working on now?
What is next for Tinsley? So I think when you and I were together, and I was talking to this amazing group of realtors, we were talking about owning your next chapter,
Mhm.
and we think about the seasons of our lives and the different stages. And I compared it rather than a ladder, which a ladder's only linear, and we know that's not how a career goes. I compared it to more of a mountain climb.
Mhm.
So I'm reaching, kind of the summit of what I can do in my industry. One gap that I've seen right now, and I can't reveal too much about it, but it does have to do with the game of golf. And since I'm on the verge of empty nesting, my husband's an avid golfer. He said, Tinsley, if you will get involved with golf, I'll take you on really nice work or nice trips. And I'm like, sign me up. I like to
Mhm.
travel. So he got me fitted for some clubs and I've been out there a lot. And Claire, I'm so excited to learn how much golf is life and life is golf. It's
Mhm.
such a mental game. Obviously, it's a sport and you need to swing for the ball
Yeah.
like it's a sport, but there's so much self leadership
Mhm.
involved with golf, and I will not write a book about golf yet. I had a pinky promise Steve that I would not write another
Mhm.
book till Ella graduates from college, but there's definitely a keynote or two
Yeah.
about golf and life and leadership, and there's definitely an experience where I'm going to gather about 10 women in Atlanta
Nice.
and lead them through this golf. It's really leadership and business development through the lens of golf. So that's kind of what Tinsley's got cooking. And
I
the more
like
it
that.
kind of forms out, and the more people that I'm,
Mhm.
voluntolding to come into this experience with me, I'm envisioning the visors and the
Yeah.
experiences. And one thing that I've seen about golf is that we do a really good job of sending women to golf clinics. There's a lot of clinics out there, teenies and tea times, and golf clinics are fantastic for that beginning golfer. But if
Mhm.
you're a one of my age, you've been to your share of golf clinics, right? I don't need another clinic, especially if I'm trying to use golf as a business accelerator.
Yeah.
I need lessons. I need
Mhm.
to understand the etiquette of golf, just some of the nuances. I need to learn how to play fast. But I also need to plug in things like the resilience,
Mhm.
coming back from a bad shot, whether you're in a cart or you're in business.
Yeah.
So women are, by saying no to invitations or they don't have time or they don't know how to play, we're leaving money and we're leaving opportunities, future promotions on the table. And so I'm jumping in that pool and saying we're going to look at golf a little bit differently. So
Very cool.
if your people have golf events coming up, I am excited to talk with them about that. But so that is really a little bit of self-protection because
Mhm.
I know the house is gonna get real quiet when we drop Ella off in
Mhm.
2 weeks, but it's just gonna be another change. My mom and I are gonna travel a lot and get into some trouble, and who knows, I've got a new TikTok channel, so I'm
Love it.
trying my hand at that social media. So I got
Very
a lot
cool.
going on.
It's gonna be fun to watch. I can't wait to do that. So I have one final question for you, and then I will let you go on with your day. And that is sitting where you sit today. How do you define success for yourself now?
I'm going to take a quote from Mary Kay Ash. And I'm not going to butcher the quote. I'm just going to give you the synopsis of it is when I leave this world, someone will say she cared.
It's beautiful.
And I think I try to do that every day. My alarm that I set on my phone when I wake up every morning, I look at it and it says, "Go help a woman change her life today." And God ends up putting this woman in my path. It could be at work, it could be at Starbucks, it could be, you know, the person delivering the mail. I never know where she'll show up,
Mhm.
but when she shows up, I know she
Yeah.
is the person, and I get chills when I talk about this. And just somehow I know how to coach her.
Yeah. Beautiful.
It's really cool. And so, yeah, I would say as long as I'm leaving that legacy of impact and people know, woman knows that I cared about her that day and that she was able to lead herself with a little more confidence, I would say I'll be successful.
Love it. Well, Tinsley, thank you so much for your time today, for your knowledge. I wish you continued success. Can't wait to watch your next chapter come together. And just thank you for shedding some light on our viewers today. So, for all of you watching, thanks for being here. Share this with someone else. Give us a 5-star review, and we will see you next time for another episode of Clarity in Action.
Thanks, Clara.